Welcome in to Check the Mic, Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson, and the great Mike Renner joining us for a very special pre-recorded show. That's right. We're talking Mike Renner's top 5 NFL draft prospects, but we're all in Indianapolis. We're all in Indy right now. So this is all pre-recorded. Brought to you by FanDuel, coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies, of course. That's what our billionaire named the studio.
Cromartie Studio.
Yes. Nice. Antonio Cromartie Studio in part with Huggies.
I brought up Cromartie a lot this draft season.
Really? Oh, you've got we waiting for the defense?
Well, Tremont McCoy. Tremont McCoy's he's the next.
Not for the child.
No.
I was going to say, well, let's leave that at that. But we'll talk about that on the defense show.
Yeah.
So programming alert here. We're sitting here on a Wednesday of Combine Week. We've pre-recorded the top 5 by position from Mike Renner of CBS Sports.
Yes.
Talking offense today, and tomorrow we'll talk defense. Top 5 every position. So first off, reintroduce yourself to the audience that already knows you and where they can find all your stuff. What are you doing in Indy? What's going on?
CBS Sports Draft Analyst. We're doing a bunch of player interviews all throughout the week, so check those out. And find me on X at Mike Renner _.
Let's do it. You should do it. And now let's go. Top 5. It's all at cbssports.com. And let's start with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Top 5 quarterbacks. What are we doing at the top here? You've got Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson. I believe that's very chalky across the board here.
It is.
Garrett Nussmeier, number 3. Cade Klubnik from Clemson, number 4. Drew Aller from Penn State, number 5. As a whole, can you see anybody not having Fernando Mendoza as number 1?
No. I think it's going to be quite the hot take to have anyone else number 1.
There will be. Somebody's out there.
There's always someone. There's always someone.
Right.
And can I give an amendment to that? I actually, embarrassed to say, had not watched Cole Payton in full when I put those rankings out. He would be quarterback 4 for me. So
He's 4?
North Dakota State's Cole Payton.
The North Dakota State.
Would be quarterback 4.
Is he the lefty?
Lefty.
Yeah. He was the guy. He definitely had the most lively-looking arm at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
When we were there.
So
that would bump Klubnik down to 5 and Aller down to 6.
Yes.
We could amend. We could do it right on our graphics. We could fix the graphics later.
And it's not.
Post.
After the top 2, we're probably not going to see. I wouldn't really draft a guy until like late day 2, early day 3.
That was my question. Is like what? Okay, everyone I think more or less is going to have the same 1, 2, and then 3 through whatever. Mm-hmm. What is that going to look like when it comes to draft time? Mendoza's going to go number 1 overall. I mean, Jeremy Fowler had an article that was like 8 executives. They all said slam dunk number 1. Like it's just that's the only thing that's happening. Then there's the debate of, is somebody going to take Ty Simpson in the first round? Are they going to get him in the second? How's that going to work? But he's going to be the next guy off the board somewhere. And then where does the next quarterback come off the board at all?
Gosh, I've heard, people that like Carson Beck, I think that's potential because he's shown in the past he has had some high flashes, but he's 6-year. I think his arm got worse post UCL tear, and he's not really the prototype of what we think of as developmental quarterbacks. So those guys that really haven't had that kind of upside, they had. Dylan Gabriel went top 100 last year, which was surprising, but that was, I think, out of desperation. So back into the top 100 would be the next earliest, I'd say. I just don't see anything going higher than that.
As soon as it's basically the delineation of whether teams think that guy's a starter or not at any point, really, right? If they're not seeing a starters, then they're probably going day 3 and day 3 and just all the way down.
But we know the number of times that Ty Simpson's lack of experience and 15 starts and all the different recent quarterbacks that are inexperienced, we know how many times that's going to come up. Does that work? Did that work in favor for Dylan Gabriel? Now, again, it's only one team. I think other teams are probably lower on him, even though you and I, we all liked him. All 3 of us actually kind of liked Dylan Gabriel for where he went. But does that end up working for Carson Beck because of the experience?
Probably. I do think that that's going to be the sticking point for Ty Simpson. But also, in a way, if it's such a weak class, maybe the selling point for some teams. I think teams that don't need the starter right now, that would be the selling point for them. If you're talking about the Rams who have 2 first-rounders, and you get a developmental guy, that might be intriguing that he already was this good this early on. So I do think that's – if you're going to draft Carson Beck on day 2, that's really the biggest reason why.
From couple names just to discuss in this group here. Garrett Nussmeier had a chance to go a little bit higher. I don't think he's the toolsiest guy as far as straight up velocity or movement or any, nothing that stands out there. But I remember texting you before the season, and I thought there were some quarterbacks, like Lenore Sellers had plus running ability. And I thought, and he's not in this class, but I thought Nussmeier had just plus anticipation.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't remember. You brought this up on Bryce Young a couple of years ago. Like, you hadn't seen anticipation at the college level the way Bryce Young. I
think his is the best I can remember coming out.
Nussmeier's in that bucket for me. The problem with Nussmeier, and he got benched this past year, and he's had some ugly football that he's played. But the anticipation, and when it looks right, it stands out. That looks different than everyone else to me.
He's got such a nice feel for the position. I think he has a high floor because that's why I put him at 3. Is just because I feel confident saying Garrett Nussmeier can play quarterback in the NFL. We're sitting here 5 years from now. I would be surprised if he's out of the NFL entirely. Whereas 5 years from now, Cade Klubnik could be out of the NFL. Drew Aller could be out of the NFL. Carson Beck, none of those guys would really surprise me if it just doesn't work out. And it's just like, okay, they're gone. But Nussmeier, I don't see that same sort of ability to completely poop the bed. So
does he win as we're sitting here at the Combine interview sessions, does he win the interview sessions, the whiteboard sessions, everything that they're going through right now?
I think so. I mean, I feel like a common trend of late has been guys whose parents were NFLers, whether it's Joe Alt, whether it's Patrick Surtain, even this year's class, Josiah Trotter, linebacker from Mizzou. It's just like they look like they know the game better than everyone else. And just you get such a leg up by being around it the way someone like Garrett would be with his dad, Doug. And you just see it on his tape. And so for not being physically gifted, he still has the best feel for the position. I even put him up there with guys, better than Ty Simpson, up there with someone like Fernando Mendoza.
While we're talking about the Combine thing, this could change by now, but I saw Ty Simpson is apparently planning to throw. What do you make of that?
I think he should. I mean, because
Put the entire evaluation on this. This is it. This is all that matters.
Well, this class specifically doesn't have a lot
it's like 50% of his reps.
Doesn't have a lot of strong arms. I don't know if Aller's throwing or not, but he's one of the ones that would really top him in that regard. But if it's him, and then again, you're comparing them because if you need a quarterback, you're still going to be in the market for a quarterback. You're still going to want one. So if it's him versus Klubnik, him versus Beck, him versus Nussmeier, him versus, Peyton's maybe the only one that can really hold his own with Ty Simpson in that regard. He's just going to look better. So, it's going to behoove him to throw if you get that one-to-one comparison right there.
What about Drew Aller?
Yeah, so you guys know I don't follow college football. Not this time a year ago, but almost the last thing I remember from Drew Aller a year ago is this guy was being talked about as he should come out this year. He might be the second QB off the board. This was back when, Shedeur Sanders was being talked about as a surefire, top 10, top 15 draft pick. Cam Ward was going to be one. But Aller could be the second guy off the board. And even some people were trying to make the case that Aller could be the first QB drafted. And then here we are a year later and change, and he's QB 5, and that's not even like that much of a consensus opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it went as bad as possible for him this last year. It just did. But he has experience, almost 2.5 years as a starter, and he's going to get drafted probably before the 6th round just because – he's 6'5", 240. He's got a cannon for an arm.
I can fix him,
Moves
man.
well
I
in the
can
pocket.
fix him.
Someone can fix him. And,
right?
And it is the mechanics. That's honestly probably the biggest worry is he does not spin it well at all. We're still sitting here after, he changed his mechanics senior year of high school going into freshman year of Penn State, and they're still bad. It's like, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
But what's the nutshell version of what went so wrong in a year's time?
Lost Tyler Warren.
It's really in 2 years' time, though, because just really quick to set the stage, right? Because you had him high 2 years ago, right? As a projection, right? Because we're sitting here saying we're projecting, it was like October of his second year start, whatever it was. And it's like, well, he's got a good arm, and he's got the size, and he's got enough to work with. Okay, let's see how this develops. And it never developed. Mm-hmm. And it never developed even though Penn State went and got these receivers for him. And then at the end of that year, they're like, oh, these receivers, maybe they weren't as good as we thought. We're going to go back to the portal and get better receivers. And then it didn't work again. And then even in his second to last season, it was like, okay, every time they played Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame in the playoff, awful. I mean, he was not good at all. Boise State, they had 2 playoff wins, Boise and SMU, and he did almost nothing in those games. So it was like any good game where it was a showcase game, it was a bad showcase.
Yeah,
and then this year got worse.
His one game to hang his hat on was 2024 USC, and that 2024 USC defense was god-awful. So it's like that's your one game. It's okay.
So it never developed for Aller. But I do want, again, it's like people, they see the film, but they also see, you mentioned this, when you watch the Ryan Leafs and Boomer Esiasons and former NFL quarterbacks walk around, you're like, I kind of get it. I kind of get why they get enamored by the big, strong-armed quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, those guys all look, different physically.
That's what's happening this week. They're going to –
I can't believe I never got a photo. Bryce Young was walking around all Super Bowl week, and I swear to God I'm taller than he is. Yeah. I'm like, we never got the picture. I just want one picture of me standing next to Bryce Young to be like, I am tall.
You and I –
now, technically, he may – like if we back to back, he may be higher, but it's hair. Yeah. Right? But like top of the head to top of the head, I'm taller than he is.
I don't think it's coincidence that him and Kyler both rock the similar, giving themselves a couple inches
let the hair grown out a bit.
They're not doing the crew cut. They're not keeping it tight.
That's why I'm doing it. You and I need a third person, conscienceless, just has no conscience whatsoever, that we can
take the comedy photographs.
Yeah, to just nudge us to do that. Because you and I walk around like, it'd be so funny if I forced a fumble on this guy. It'd be so funny if I did this. What if I did this? What if I went and antagonized this guy? We have great content ideas, but neither one of us is bold enough to go execute it.
I think it would be funny if we just generally in these things had a running list of photos. I want 2 folders of photographs, right? I want ridiculously tall people, and then I want a sort of like a cell phone coverage list of heights of me with various other people. Go here's where I fit, in the normal side of it, right? And then up here is the tall people, and down here is the small people. The other one that I wanted from Super Bowl week that would have been hilarious, there was some woman walking around, right? And she must have been 4'9" or something. But I was like, Steve next to her would have been hilarious. But I sent a sort of surreptitiously taken photograph. I'm like, we need a picture of you with this woman for context. The guy that she's standing next to is my height, and she was down here.
It's the Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis picture.
Oh, legitimately that. Anything else on the quarterbacks that's worth discussing? No. In a nutshell, what do you like about Fernandez? Mendoza's going to be the least talked about player. This happened to Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams. You just assume everybody knows. What's your nutshell evaluation, scouting report on Mendoza?
I think the 2 biggest things that separate him as a true number 1 overall franchise quarterback prospect are his ability to operate under pressure. I mean, he is truly fearless, has some insane throws under pressure on his tape this past year. And then just the football nerd aspect to him. I mean, the guy lives, sacrifices everything.
Show the LinkedIn.
Yeah, not even football nerd, just nerd.
Ready for hire.
Yeah. Truly, that's all he cares about. And that's, even at the quarterback position, even at a position that's that valuable, it's still a rarity kind of in the NFL. There's still a lot of these guys, it's still just a job to them or just something they do. It's not something that they're completely invested in every moment of every day, the way Fernando Mendoza is. And then to be like that, and then he's also just a very intelligent guy, obviously, that combination has a strong track record, I'll say.
How good is he as a prospect relative to other years? Obviously, he's by far the best quarterback prospect this year, but where does he rank in a normal year?
So the past 2 classes, 2024 and 2025, I would have had it probably the top 4 in 2024, which for me was Caleb, Drake, and then kind of a tier, Bo Nix, Jaden, and then I probably would have had Cam right behind those 4, and I would have Mendoza in front of the last 3. So behind Caleb and Drake, in front of Bo, Jaden.
So he's ahead of Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, and
Cam Ward for me.
And Cam Ward.
Wow.
And you were very high on Bo Nix, I think, relative to a lot of people.
Yeah, I like Nix.
And
there you were saying you're not taking this after the fact victory lap on Jaden Daniels or anything. You're a little bit lower on him.
I had him 4.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you brought up his arm there, right? That's something that people are not giving him credit for at the moment.
It's good. I don't think it's special. I did on the show on Pushing the Pile, we did tiers, and I had like a special tier in the NFL, which I think is Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams. I think they're kind of in their own class right now in terms of starters.
Right.
And then after that, it's guys like Mahomes, Jordan Love. I'm trying to think who else. I think maybe Michael Penix was in there. I don't think I'd put it at that one either, but it's the one right below that. So the one right below
pretty
that.
Good.
So it's pretty good. It's above average, I'd say.
And I think that speaks to the plays he makes under pressure.
Yeah.
He gets enough velocity on the ball even while getting hit.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Nick Foles a little bit. Foles used to make some really nice throws while getting hit, which is why he went on some of those great runs. I think Mendoza's got good carry, good RPMs.
Yeah.
It is a good NFL,
arm
from what I've seen. All right, let's go running backs here. You say only 2 in your top 100, so a lot of people think it's a weak running back class. Sounds like you agree.
I agree. Go Irish, though.
Other than the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, of course.
They're
so here's his top 5. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, both out of Notre Dame, Katron Allen out of Penn State, Jonah Coleman out of Washington, and Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest. Well, let's start with Love. How good of a prospect? Same question, Sam. Where does Love rank among Bijan and Genty and all the recent top running backs?
Yeah, I think he's firmly in that mix. I don't know if I'd put him as good as either of those two, but so just a touch behind, but like just a touch. Like
at least you had the decency to not wear Notre Dame branded gear when you put this rankings out.
No, he has special big playability with a little bit less consistency than those other two guys had. A little bit less in terms of the physicality that Genty had, special sort of phone booth stuff that Bijan had. But as a home run hitter, he's Jahmyr Gibbs-esque, I'd say, in that regard as a prospect.
So as far as running back 2 then, why is Price there? And you said only 2 in the top 100. It's really not that close with the next tier of running backs here.
Yeah, I think Price. I think clear tier between Love and Price, maybe even like 2 tiers, right? And then clear tier after Price and everyone else. But Price he's explosive, and I love the way he runs. I feel like anytime he came in the game, he almost runs just a little bit more decisively and physical than Love. Love's obviously more creative and can do crazy things, but every time Price is in the game, you just knew that you were going to get positive plays out of him. And really well built, good in a phone booth too. I think he has really good feet. There's just not a lot of holes in his game other than he never had more than 125 or something carries in a season. So that's what's he going to be like if he's your starter is a question. But I think I feel very safe about him as a running back at the next level.
Do you remember how many running backs you had in your top 100 last year? Because it was a much deeper class. I mean, you're getting
at least it was at least 6. It might have been 7.
Last year felt like a deep running back class. Again, it's going to be a fascinating offseason at the running back position because there's a lot of big-name NFL running backs either hitting free agency, potential cuts, potential re-signings, and then a weaker draft class. I think Love goes in the first round, maybe in the top 10, top 15. But, yeah, there's a lot more question marks beyond that. I really like Jonah Coleman. I think he might be the guy that I'd be considering at either 2 or 3 on the list. What'd you see from Coleman, Allen, Claiborne? Like, what stands out as far as this next group of prospects for you?
So with Katron Allen, I think he has really good vision. I think he runs really hard. I just don't think he's particularly physically gifted. He's not a great athlete. But for the NFL things, I think he does them really well. And so I will trust that guy's going to translate, even if it's not special. Like I said, after the top 2, that's why I don't have anyone in the top 100, because I'm not sure there's a starter. He's our lead back sort of starter in this draft class. There might not be. So I'll rely on Katron Allen, who could be like a committee sort of short yardage, more power back. Coleman's really intriguing because, traits-wise, he is probably, like you said, closer to 2 than 4. He's built like a bowling ball, has really good feet for a guy, and really good short area quicks, and can be explosive, and he's like a nightmare to tackle for cornerbacks because of how he's built. But I just didn't love him between the tackles. I think he doesn't maximize, and I think he's a little tentative for how physically imposing he should be. So that was my only worry with him and why he's outside my top 100. And then to 5, Claiborne, we're getting to true committee guys. I mean, he's a role player, but I think in the role that he can play, which is receiving back, sort of scat back, I think he's very good. I think he's just electric out in space, and Wake Forest and the talent around him was less than stellar.
The two guys are much higher on the consensus board. Mike Washington from Arkansas and Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. Why are those two guys not in your top 5?
So Johnson I think Johnson's 6 for me. I think he's just very good all around. I don't see anything that I would say was special on his tape, but I think he's a solid back. I think he's a solid committee back. All these guys, I think 3 through 5 are in my top 125, and I think Johnson was as well. With Washington, I think he's kind of the other side of the committee back. He's just like your power back, bigger guy who's on the older end, and I didn't see much in the way of like special power to his game to make me think that he's going to be, worth really investing in at the next level. So that's why those guys were outside my top 100.
Only other name I wanted to bring up was Katron Allen's Penn State teammate, Nick Singleton, because they had been linked together either as coming out for the NFL a year ago at this time, which goes back to part of Drew Aller's disappointment was Penn State brought the band back together, including the 2 running backs. But Singleton was the 5-star recruit, much more athletic than Allen, great speed, great traits, and I thought that the NFL might like him more, but the hype hasn't caught up yet because what's the deal with Singleton as a football player?
He's been terrible. I mean, he averaged 4.2 per carry last year.
I had concerns with him before this year.
Yeah.
Just straight up between the tackles, vision, and
terrible
field.
Vision. That's it. Terrible vision. Linear runner. No real ability to create on his own. It's really just, and you even go back to last year when he was productive, pretty much all his explosive runs, it's like fly sweeps, it's getting him on the outside, and he just runs in a straight line. And that's when he's special. He'll probably run the 4.3s at 220 plus. It'll probably be the best speed score guy in this class. But he's just the things you got to do to be productive at the NFL, because you don't get runways in the NFL. He just doesn't do well at all.
So, future 49er. He's going to run 4.3. Kyle's going to say, I could fix him. I make running backs everywhere, but Kyle's got a soft spot for a 4.3 running back that isn't a great football player.
Who ends up being useless.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what they've done before. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to get this guy. So, no, it's worthwhile as workouts are starting this week to discuss Singleton, because as you said, he could crush this thing, the jumps and everything. He could have a great week, and then people are saying, why not Nick Singleton? But yeah, the actual football playing, I think, left a little bit to be desired. And it's funny because I think a lot of the fantasy projection models and everything, because he produced early as a freshman, he still might show up well in those. But I think a lot of ball-knowing film watchers have not come around on Singleton yet. So that's you.
Yeah.
Wide receiver. You've got Jordan Tyson from Arizona State as number 1, Carnell Tate from Ohio State at number 2, Omar Cooper Jr. is number 3 from Indiana, a non-consensus selection there. Makai Lemon at 4 from USC, and then KC Concepcion at 5 from Texas A&M. So let's start at the top with Tyson. What are you seeing from him? What separates him from, say, Tate in the 1-2 mix there?
I think he's just a unique mover. I think he has high-level traits to be a high-level route runner at the next level. I'm not sure he's there yet, but he reminds me a little of Jerry Jeudy, honestly, and I don't think Jeudy failed at this.
And that used to be a good thing.
I think he failed. He didn't really fail because he had
1,300
yards last year, not this year, but the year prior. But I don't think Jeudy failed because of his talent, right?
No.
I think we can all agree that he's not the most cerebral of wide receivers. So Jordan Tyson has that sort of ability, the shake, the unique suddenness in a phone booth to keep himself clean, but then he also has the same sort of inability to play through contact consistently that Jeudy had. Like, he does not have the play strength that, would make him a surefire number 1 wide receiver in this class. While you'll see a bunch of different guys at number 1 and not him, despite having, like I said, the best movement skills in this receiver class, ability to get off the line of scrimmage, ability to throttle down, those sorts of things. just because he needs to get a little stronger, needs to play a little stronger. And then three years of injury history, ACL in 2022, clavicle in 2024, hamstrings this past year. So that's worrisome. But
that's a big week for him then. Just it's the medical checkout.
Medical checking.
But even when it doesn't check out, sometimes teams are just like 3 injuries.
Yeah.
When does 4, 5, and 6 show up? I don't know if I want to invest in that. That's a big deal.
It is.
For anyone.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he comes off the board wide receiver 3, as being my wide receiver 1, coming off the board a little later. Carnell Tate is just like he's probably going to be the most universally liked of this bunch, just because there's not much to dislike. He's got rangy frame, doesn't drop passes, good at the catch point, good deep threat, has good deep speed, improving as a route runner. You saw improving from sophomore year to junior year. He's young. So for all those reasons, just like the holes you can poke in his game, he's not super complete wide receiver. He's not the most sudden, and probably, going to be more of an intermediate to deep than an underneath guy, but he'll be good at the next level. You're getting good.
Just because it's relevant, Chiefs at 9 are such a fascinating pick, and given the Rashee Rice saga at all times, and Xavier Worthy maybe not being just more than a speed receiver, either Tyson or Tate or someone else really fit the Chiefs better than others?
That's probably Tate for what they need. I think even say Rashee Rice comes back, you have Xavier Worthy. What would be the last piece of that puzzle? Probably Carnell Tate, just some size on the outside, someone who can, run a deep comeback and you trust it consistently. He'd probably be the one that I would say, but I think him or Tyson. I definitely don't think Lemon, though. I think Lemon is not their guy at pick 9.
Well, let's talk Lemon. Why is he at 4? And what do you see from his game? He's more of a slot type of receiver.
Yes.
And those receivers usually don't get top 10 to 15 height, but he's getting some of that. And I don't know if it's because of a weak class or because he did ball out and have a great season.
I would call him a slot only, I think, and that's not as derogatory nowadays. And even for certain offenses can be, if you look at what Detroit's doing, it's like you want a guy to win from the slot. And a lot of times that's the easiest spot to get consistent production out of and some of the hardest to game plan for, because you can double an outside wide receiver. How do you double a slot, right? How do you put that within your scheme? So it's certain offenses it'll be valuable, but he, compared to the guys who've been really successful in recent years as slot only, I think he has significantly smaller wingspan. And that's what worries me and why I have him at 4. And I think you saw it against Notre Dame. And maybe I'm just being a homer here, but like Leonard Moore dominated him, truly. Like that's an NFL corner, yes, and he's a very good, and he could be a top 10 pick next year, probably will be. But that's still worrisome if you're drafting a guy in the top 10 and he's getting dominated by another guy who's getting drafted in the top 10. Because usually, I don't care who it is, usually the wide receivers win at the collegiate level, right? Usually if you're a top-tier wide receiver, you beat the top-tier corners at the collegiate level. So that was the worrisome thing for me. So the small wingspan, small catch radius, combined with that, but like, he does everything well. He is a very high floor wide receiver. I'm not worried. It's just a matter of value to me.
It's kind of like, it's some version of the Emeka Egbuka discussion was similar. It's like he's got a really high floor, but how valuable is the thing that he is at the next level, which is similar, right? It's like slot primarily, but slot. To me, the distinction is less slot only versus whatever. It's more X versus everything else. It's like the difference between a slot and a Z receiver is basically the same.
Now with tight splits and everything, like you were saying with the Lions, like you can line up outside, but with tight splits, you'll get your two-way go. You'll have the opportunity to avoid press and the whole deal.
It's more like, can you play X, yes or no? And yes is where you get to the top half of the first round.
I knew you were going to bring up Egbuka. That's just why. Because I was going to as well, but I knew where our mind was going, because that was the discussion last year. And
Egbuka's another guy who's 6'2", 205, right? Yeah. There's a difference between that and Lemon, who, I don't know, we'll see, but if he has a wingspan over 6'2", I'd be very surprised. I mean, I think it's honestly closer to 6 foot or maybe even under.
You're a wingspan guy the last couple years.
Wingspan at wide receiver. Where do you catch the ball with, Steve? Do you catch the ball with your
I'm saying across all positions. Everyone's talking about Will Campbell's arms, and you're like, have you considered wingspan?
I'm going to get wingspan to be the popular nomenclature that people talk about. They don't talk about how tall a guy is. They mention his wingspan. It's going to be on broadcast in the next 10 years at CBS.
Wingspanist.
If I have my way. But it's the more valuable measure of a guy. It truly is, because I don't care what the position is, the top of your helmet means nothing. If you have a really long head, say you have egregiously long head, what does that do for you? If you have egregiously long arms and
Davis
you're
Mills.
5'10".
Yeah, Davis Mills.
Yes, exactly.
But with receivers in particular, like how many receivers even ever put themselves in a position where their wingspan is the limiting factor? Like to me, it's almost a play. Like there's so many guys that don't ever like maximize their wingspan to begin with. It's like it doesn't matter what your wingspan is. You don't play the ball. You don't play the ball to the point where it's ever relevant.
That's fair, and I don't want those guys either. But but it still gives you your sphere of the window, basically,
right,
that the quarterback's seeing. It's kind of an optically
like
thing.
Drake London's wingspan could be 6 inches shorter than it is, and he'd still be a savant at the catch point because he's one of the few guys that actually goes and gets the ball, plays it well, tracks it well, like puts himself in a position to win those contested catches. I actually think his length, even though he's great at that, it's way more, a smaller percentage of that skill than having the skill itself.
Yeah, but to go to other positions outside of wide receiver, it's like for offensive tackle, if a stunt's coming your way, as we've seen with Will Campbell, how far can you get out? Like how far before the guy gets to you before you get to them? And we've seen with Will Campbell, it's just like
the other guy we brought up, Ibuka. The other guy that Mekhi Lemon will get talked about, connected with, and this is in part just because the same school, is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's also, I think, the ceiling of the non-X receiver, right? Like, if you were redrafting and you knew he was Amon-Ra St. Brown, how high would you take him in this draft, and how far away from that player is he?
Yeah, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you take top 10 in any draft, top 5 probably in this draft, right? So I think he's far away in that he's not the same size and it's just not the same play strength. Amon-Ra St. Brown is an ox, man. I mean, his dad was a bodybuilder, right? So there's a difference there. And that's what I go back to the Notre Dame tape. That was the one time he really caught, honestly, really someone coming and playing press man on him, because you're a slot receiver, you don't see much of it, but someone really who was strong doing that. And he had just probably half dozen reps where he's just not even getting off the line of scrimmage. So that to me is the worrisome thing. But he does play strong, but just not as strong as Amon-Ra St. Brown.
What makes Omar Cooper your number 3?
Just a much different body habitus than Mekhi Lemon. I think he's equally, if not more physically gifted in some ways, but he's 6 foot, 205, looks like a running back, plays through contact extremely well, great body control. I don't think he has the biggest catch radius either or the biggest wingspan. I think he's a little bit stouter, but he reminds me, I think a comp I had is Luther Burden for him. Just very similar sort of just explosive all-around mover, good ball skills. And so for that reason, that was kind of the delineator between the two, was just the size frame aspect.
I know our friend Dane Brugler talks about Cooper as maybe being the best after the catch among receivers.
He's so good, yeah.
The thing that caught my eye on 24 tape was just the competitiveness, going after the ball in contested situations, kind of like what makes Amon-Ra St. Brown so special. I don't know, man, I always fall back on like the Steve Smiths and Julian Edelmans and St. Brown, like those guys just want it and they've got some tenacity. That showed up to me with Cooper in a low volume 24 season, and then he had a much better 25 season. Yeah.
I saw somebody trying to make the case that he was basically Deebo Samuel again, and to be fair, they used a clip that did look very Deebo-like, but it's like Deebo's 220, 220, huge. Yeah. Actually, the player from that clip that he reminded me more of was Rashee Rice. Like again, another guy who's way more physically.
I think that's the role.
Yeah, that's strong, imposing.
What he does is the role.
Than people gave him credit for when he was coming out.
Yeah, but Rice just. I do think they're very similar. I think Rice just has gonna have. I think he had a 6'5" wingspan, and I don't think Cooper's gonna have that. He's just a much longer athlete.
The wingspan connection, I love, is great. Casey Concepcion 5, guy like Denzel Boston not on the list. How do you? See
Boston was
players?
6. Yeah. Honestly, I think I'm probably going to end up. We'll see how they test out with Boston over Concepcion, but they're honestly.
And besides wingspan, what are you looking for in this week in the test?
Well, I want to see Concepcion just catch passes. That's the one thing. If he had, let's say, Carnell Tate's ball skills, he would be above Carnell Tate on this list for me.
Wow.
He just cannot catch. And I actually,
it's got big flaw.
It's to the point where it's like, I don't know, because he gets open downfield better than anyone else in this draft class. A truly special athlete.
Telling me he's Quentin Johnson?
No. He's because he's much shorter. He's more in the Jalen Waddle kind of mold of just all around gifted, and just he's going to get open, but he's not going to catch a lot of 50-50 balls.
How many receivers do you think go in the first round?
I'd bet these 5, just because I think Cooper sneaks in the first round, given the need for some teams at the back end. And then I think Denzel Boston probably ends up a first round or 2, so I'll say 6.
2 guys that I wanted to bring up. Number one, because coming out of the Senior Bowl, he made the play of the week. There's a lot of traits alike as well, and Notre Dame, so you should boost him higher anyway. Fields.
Yeah, I was so impressed by his tape at the Senior Bowl. It looked, I don't know if he was nagging an injury on tape at Notre Dame, but he looked faster, a lot faster. And I think that was the biggest thing at Notre Dame, was just like stacking and getting on top of cornerbacks. He didn't do routinely, but at the Senior Bowl, it's like it looked easy for him. So I bumped him up a good amount after that. I think I still have a couple other guys above him because I don't see a complete wide receiver, but his ball skills are so good, and he's so good at the catch point that I think he still has a somewhat high floor because of that.
And then you started this in our mock draft thing, but remember the way last year we both noticed Cassius Howell from looking at all the Texas A&M tape. I realized, having finally created the 2026 version of my draft notes folder, that I also put an asterisk next to Chris Bell. So It's time to start wide receiver, first round wide receiver Chris Bell from Louisville.
He's coming off an ACL, and that's maybe the only reason why he's not getting late first round hype, or at least first round hype.
So what do you think about Chris Bell?
I mean, he's a size speed guy.
Yeah.
Uniquely, if you talk about Deebo Samuel size, I mean, he's probably the closest physically, size-wise, to him.
Taller, though, right? Even.
Yeah, I think he's like 6 foot, 6'1". But he's just not. He's nowhere near Deebo after the catch, though. He's more just like get upfield, straight line after the catch. I wouldn't have had him in the first round conversation, truthfully, just based off his tape. And I think he needs to improve a lot as a route runner still. I just see he's somewhat, put this delicately, just somewhat, I don't want to say stiff, because I don't think he's particularly stiff, but unrefined. Like he's very
it feels like
on
he's
paper route runner. He doesn't set stuff up.
It feels like he's the latest in that list of college players that are more like athlete than receiver.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, somebody's supposed to turn them into a receiver.
There you go.
Most of the time, it never actually happens. But everyone loves the theory of those guys. Savion Williams, like Traylon Burks. Like, theoretically, there's an amazing playmaker to be had in those guys, but nobody ever bothers to put them into actually, okay, now you're gonna learn how to play this position and become amazing.
I do think receivers so much more natural talent than it's given credit for, because it's coordination at the end. I mean, seeing a ball in the air, knowing where it's going to be, is not something that you learn at 22 years old. If you have that, if you've had that when you're 16, you'll have it when you're 25. If you don't have it when you're 22, you won't have it.
There are people that never they play wide receiver in the NFL and have never been good at tracking the football.
Yeah.
Like, they can get to the right place at the right time, and once the ball's in the general vicinity, they can do a decent job, but like, they're never natural at tracking it.
Yeah.
All right, one more name I'm going to mention who's not near the top 5, but because it's Combine Week, I'm going to mention him anyway. Brennan Thompson.
Yes.
From Mississippi State, 5'9", 170. What are we going to see from Brennan Thompson here at the Combine?
I mean, he's the most explosive athlete in class, bar none. He'll run the 4.2s somewhere. I just want to know. You're gonna hate. I don't even want to say it. Actually,
what his wingspan is.
Yeah, I do want to know what his wingspan is. I do. I want to know what his wingspan, because he actually looks.
I make fun of the analytics nerds every now and again, because they're supposed to be the best conveyors of numbers and this and that, but what they do is they're like, oh, I found a new number. This is now it. This is a sack ratio. That's it. pressure to sack rate's the
with
only
a
thing that
high
matters for you.
R squared
Right.
number.
We care about all of the data, and it's like, and then you land on one number. You're doing the same thing now.
Well,
with,
what I'm saying is
wingspan.
I want to see his
just
wingspan
joking.
because I think he actually has the ability to haul in some pass outside his frame. I don't think he's a bad at tracking the ball, bad at catching, and I think he actually is built a little bit broader than he's listed at. I think he's listed at 5'11". He'll probably be like 5'10", 5'9", but I think he's a little bit more broadly built, and so can be more of just he'll be a one-trick deep threat sort of guy, but I think he can be a real weapon in that regard.
That kind of weight at 5'9" is also not insignificant. Like, it's not Tez Johnson with 155 pounds behind him. You know what I mean?
But he is
He's tanked out. Like, these guys were small.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have him. He moves completely differently than everyone else. So Daniel Jeremiah mentioned he could break Xavier Worthy's 4.21 record. Now, when that happens, if a guy lands at 4.28, who the heck knows the difference between 4.21 and 4.28, where it ends up being. But the guy moves faster than anybody on film. He's my perfect wide receiver 4 type. He's the guy I want on my team. He's the Khalif Raymond. He's what John Ross should have been, which is consistent, get behind the defense. But he's got the ball tracking too. Like, he does actually track the ball in the air. He's got the Willie Mays over the head catch on film and everything. He moves differently.
I think he can be. Could be like 85% Zay Flowers in terms of like what some of the things Zay Flowers does with the downfield ability. I think it could be.
And the last thing, he had one punt return in his career. It was in his last game, and it goes for 44 yards. And he just looks like a natural punt
great
returner.
average.
Yeah.
And I'm like, again, hey, I hate special teams, but that's a nice addition, like a Khalif Raymond at worst.
And I'll say
to your
this.
team.
He went over 1,000 yards. He's 5'9", 170. I think he had 2 screen catches all year long. So, most guys that go over 1,000 yards that are in that mold, you get about a third of it.
Most guys that look like that just get fed those plays.
Zachariah Branch, I think, was like 40% of his production was on screens. So it's real production when you see his numbers.
All right, we'll get to the rest of the offensive players. But first, have you ever wanted to go to the NBA Finals? Well, now's your chance, courtesy of FanDuel. All you have to do is use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. NBA futures let you lock in your pick for who you think will go all the way, whether it's a team to win the championship or a conference title. Visit FanDuel.com/3030 to get started. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states for Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, Wyoming. No purchase necessary. Limit 1 entry for Profit Boost token only. Opt-in required. Must apply. Profit Boost token on select market. Restrictions apply. See full terms, including methods of entry at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Also want to tell you about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage, but when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. So while you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors, and after a few weeks, you get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You can get started today at Root.com. Like when we have our own show, don't worry, I'll handle the ads, man.
We just read ours once and then they just get spliced in.
We could do that, but it's more organic and natural if I have to.
It's more organic when you're speed reading.
If I got to bring it here.
Steve wants the reps.
The reps are good. We used to interject that other dude doing terms and conditions for us that one time. That was great. I ran into him, by the way. Awkward. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, tight end class. What do we have at tight end? Kenyon Sadiq, number 1. Michael Trigg from Baylor at number 2. Nate Borkircher.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, what'd I do? Texas A&M. Max Clare from Ohio State. And then Josh Cuevas from Alabama.
Definitely not a Notre Dame homer because Borkircher's the guy who beat Notre Dame on the 4th down catch at the end brutally.
He always seemed to look good every time I watch Texas A&M.
Isn't one of these guys just not featured ever?
Yeah.
Only 19 catches this past year, but the Senior Bowl, he was easily the best guy there. That's what honestly gave him the number 3 for me. Is he has real size, can run routes, but just didn't get featured. I will say this caveat: Eli Stowers, the Vanderbilt tight end. I'm calling a wide receiver right now.
Oh wow! Okay.
Out of a matter of honesty, he's 235, and he plays like a wide receiver on tape. So
you're doing this. Is the NFL doing this?
I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see, but he's smaller than Chase Claypool.
Do you have any guys where you rank them at multiple positions?
No, I decided for
you
each
just
guy.
decide.
But on my board, so Stowers on my board actually is higher than anyone past Kenyon Sadiq. I still think as a big slot, he's going to be valuable, but that's what he is. You're not drafting him and saying, I need a tight end, I'm going to draft him. Now, I feel similarly about Michael Trigg from Baylor, but he's going to have a 7-foot wingspan, and he could grow, and if you lit a fire on him as a blocker, I could see him really being a tight end. I don't know if I see Stowers, but he started 2 years at Texas A&M at quarterback. Now, he didn't start, but that was where he was to start his NFL collegiate career, Stowers. So only 3 years of playing tight end. Maybe he has more physical development in the tank, but I don't think you're drafting him and asking him ever really to play on the line.
What do you do with Sadiq? He's the one tight end rumored to go in the first round. Mm-hmm. He's listed in the 240s. I think he runs, when we talk about combine workouts, tight ends who run about 4.6 or better, it's like a pretty strong cutoff. Like the better tight ends are usually under that. It's not perfect across the board, like anything. So if he might run in the 4.5s, low 4.6s, and he's got crazy power as a run blocker, but he's 240, and that's usually your move tight end size. So, what do you do with Sadiq?
I think so what I described Harold Fannin as last year, I think he's the same role. And it's growing in significance, kind of your detached second tight end in a team that wants to run a lot of 2 tight ends, who's moving across the formation. He's going block and backside. He's pulling out. He's going to the second level. He's not digging out a 6 technique on the line of scrimmage. But doing that, if he's moving across to the backside and has to cut a DN, he's great at stuff like that. He's awesome on the move, and you can really feature him as a blocker in that regard. So I think that's his best role, and I think he's hitting the NFL at just the right time because a lot of people want that role nowadays. But you're going to have to accept that he's built more like a rocked-up running back than a true tight end.
So in the last 3 years, we've seen Brock Bowers 2 years ago go in the first round. We've seen Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. So where does Sadiq, not so much, where does he rank, but also stylistically, how do they all compare?
Yeah, I think we even said it last, those are insanely good tight end classes. I think we were blessed with the past 2 classes. Those were not a sign of things to come. It was just those were rare guys. And you're seeing it right now. They're all probably 3 of the top 5 tight ends in the NFL already. So he's not that. He's a clear tier behind that. But I still think he's a first rounder because a lot of tight end production is just straight line speed, post catch, dynamism, and he's great at both of those things, and then can block on the move. So he's a more limited in his role, but in that role, I think he can be very effective.
Yeah, he's a very good athlete, rocked up, body type. He'll be interesting to see here.
And I think he's still young too, also. So
yeah, you have him 20 in your notes here.
Yes,
on the site. Any other tight ends we should be keeping an eye on before we move to the O-line?
I say Trigg is so interesting. He is, as a pure go-get open tight end, he's exceptional. But he is so disinterested as a blocker. He's so, truly one of the most disinterested I've ever seen in terms of does not even attempt. He
doesn't even try.
Plays patty cake.
Did you feel the same about Elijah Arroyo last year? Because I thought Arroyo was one of the worst. It wasn't even.
I thought he was just bad. I thought he was just bad.
He was
actually.
just bad at it. Yeah. So you're
I thought
talking
he had more effort.
legitimate.
Trigg doesn't even want to be one.
Because you get the scout speak on that is willing blocker, right? You do, for the guy that's not good, but he tries. He's willing, and it's all right, what do you?
He's doing it against his will. Yeah. He's being forced by his coach.
So Trigg is an unwilling blocker. Can we make him a willing blocker? That usually doesn't go over.
No, but he's so gifted as a receiver that I still think someone takes the chance on day 2 because money can be a motivator too.
It can. Go the other way as well.
Yeah.
Let's go offensive line, starting with tackle. All right, you've got Caden Proctor, number 1 from Alabama. The 2 Utahs, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu. Blake Miller from Clemson is number 4. Max Hyainacher from Arizona State is number 5. How did you get with Proctor as your number 1 here?
He is the most physically gifted tackle of the bunch. And the biggest thing is that unlike a lot of 350, these massive tackles, I think he has great body control. Whether it's, the run he had, the throwback screen or whatever, you saw
watching
it
him
there.
catch screens. How much did that affect your ranking?
I mean,
they're
a
feeding
little,
him the
right?
ball.
Or just his ability to react to inside moves, which, go and watch his pressures. It's not bigger tackles. That's a lot of times what they struggle with. And they end up having to set real tight in the NFL, and they just get ran around. I don't think he has to. I think he reacts super well to those. It really is just some ability to get to the edge quickly enough. And it was more at the beginning of the year than at the end of the year. I thought he fixed those things. And I think his biggest thing is just weight. He got to Alabama, he was over 400 pounds. He's listed at 366. Again, beginning of the year, I thought he moved slower on tape than at the end of the year. But, Ozempic's on Medicaid now. And we got rid of True Tide coming, so that stuff can be controlled, is what I'm saying, if the guy really wants to.
You think the weight issue is fine?
I think the weight issue can be controlled in today's day and age, especially with how much money's on the line.
Are people doing that? Are people firing up their NFL players onto the whatever it is, GLP-1s, Ozempic?
I'm saying it's a possibility if his weight really is.
Doesn't that have fairly non-desirable side effects
for
NFL
muscle
caliber
loss,
athletes?
but there's also
and bone density loss, right? Doesn't it also, that seems like a problem.
But I'm half joking. I do think that he's not even 21 years old. He turns 21 in June, and I think we'll see at the combine he's going to test just off the charts. So the guy is a unique specimen that I think has great balance for a guy that size. Evan Neal, what's the difference between Evan Neal and him? Because Evan Neal's obviously the biggest worry of jumbo tackles and just never couldn't even hack it. 4 years into his career, might not even be in the NFL next year. I think the balance is like Caden Proctor is not on the ground. Evan Neal is on the ground a lot.
I'll be honest for our listeners that have gone through our last few mock drafts and everything. I've soured on Proctor because I watched him earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gone back and rewatched him in Pass Pro. Early in the year against Florida State, he got absolutely smoked, and by speed, and that was a huge concern to me. But it did get better as the season went on. He was moving far better out of his stance, getting into position. There were some reps. Remember when Tyler Guyton came out and we said, look, he loses way more than he should, and when he does, it's really ugly. But when he wins, Guyton, right? His wins were amazing. Like, he just locks dudes up, and it looks incredible. I feel like Proctor's got some of that.
Yeah.
And for all that we talk about wingspans and arm lengths and all these different things, the ability to recover is important, and he has that. Like, if he's a half step out of place, he just gets his hands on somebody and it's over. He has the ability to recover. So that I'm higher on him than I was even just a few weeks ago, just by catching up, I think, to what the rest of the season looked like for him.
And why I mentioned the age is because he's so young that you'll see big development in small amounts of time. And I think if you haven't watched Alabama and you're still thinking this is Nick Saban's Alabama, it's like, no, he's dropping back 30-plus times a game in
They're
pass
in pure
pro.
5 and 7
Yes,
drop
it's
pass
real.
block. Yep.
He's tested. He was really tested in pass protection. He was not protected in that offense.
So we talked about this a little bit before, the differences of positions and projecting guys one way or the other. Some people have Caden Proctor projected as an interior offensive lineman. The big name, though, that's not on your list at all because you haven't projected somewhere else is Francis Mauigoa, the Miami offensive tackle / guard. First of all, what is it about Mauigoa that you project him inside to guard? And secondly, how do you do that? What's your thought process generally when it comes to these offensive line? What are you looking for when you say this guy has played tackle, but he's a guard at the next level?
I think foot speed and reactive athleticism is the biggest thing that with Maui Noah was just a little bit more guard based, and then body habitus, play strength. I think if your trimmer, longer, leaner guys or tackles, your squattier, stubbier guys or guards, and he just trends towards the latter far more. But I just think he could be such a good guard. His best reps, even at tackle, are like a deuce block. It's stuff in a phone booth. It's short setting a defensive end. Like those, when he gets his hands on guys, he is truly dominant. But his biggest struggle is just getting that hand on a guy in the first place. So that's something that gets mitigated so much by a move to guard. And so with the value of guards being, I think, more in today's NFL and people wanting those firm pockets, I think he could be like an all-pro sort of guard. Good tackle, but it's to the point where I think the balance shifts because I think he's that much more effective in those tight spaces. Now, maybe it's a scheme where you're running he's covered a lot by tight ends. You do a lot of two tight end stuff. And so you're making your tackles more into guard. Sure, keep him at tackle. But I just saw more prototypical guard traits with him.
So you're not necessarily saying can't do.
No.
You're saying
exactly.
I just love him.
Just love
inside.
him at guard.
You just love him from so he's your number one guard candidate, which moves Vega Ioane down at Penn State, who's the consensus pure guard, I think.
Correct.
Outside of Maui Noah. We'll get to those guys in a second. Sorry for the false alarm there, Will. Really quick, Utah tackles, how do you separate those guys, Fanu and Lomu?
Fanu's so athletic. I mean, he's such a good – if you're outside zone-based team, he is your top tackle in this draft class. I think you'll be a star in something like that. He's just so good on the move. Under 33-inch arms, though, that's going to be the biggest issue with him.
Is that going to be allowed? Are we going to bring this up again?
But he's
depends what his wingspan is.
Got a broader shoulders than Will Campbell.
There it is.
I'm keeping him at tackle. Obviously, I'm ranking him at tackles, and we just talked about it. So I thought his ability to mirror speed is awesome on the edge, and he's pretty solid. I think he's a little on the trimmer undersize, but I think he can hold up to pure strength guys. So honestly, not a lot to dislike about him. He's going to be. I have those two as the clear top two offensive linemen in this class. They're going to be like top 6 or so players on my board when it's all said and done. I think you need a guy, you just draft one of them. It's not as sure of things as I felt about last year's maybe. I thought they put better stuff on tape, but I think these guys are very traitsy, have the tools it needs to be successful.
Fano felt like a technician to me, and then Lomu, for a guy that got beaten as cleanly as he did at times, I'm like, I still believe because he's so young.
I do so.
And I really think the movement skills, it's
coordination.
Just like, dude,
he's so coordinated.
Just get him to his landmarks a little bit more consistently, and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he's young bodes well for him. But when you're taking a guy like Lomu in the first round, if you got to play him right away, you're going to deal with 2 years of growing pains. That happens on an offensive line anyway, but it might be worth it year 3 and beyond.
Everything you said, I completely agree with. I just think he'll figure it out. He's not only my third-ranked tackle, I think he's my third-ranked offensive lineman just because I feel so confident seeing his just whole body of work and the way he uses his hands, the way he finds answers when things haven't gone quite right or he's not at the right landmark or he sees something different. That guy I trust to get the job done at the NFL level. So that's why he's number 3.
All right, now to the offensive line, interior offensive line.
Right, just one more.
Sorry.
Before last name. A lot of people, I think, are talking about this guy recently. Dane Brugler was bringing him up as an ascending name. Monroe Freeling from Georgia. He's not on your list at all.
Good shout, Sam. I mean, he was. I think he went 17 in Field Yates mock draft to the Lions, and I think the ESPN people are starting to talk him up. There's always tackles who are mocked in the teens, who by draft time it's like this guy could go 8.
Right.
This guy could go 9 because we're talking offensive line. Freeling seems like the guy that's ascending just from that perspective as well.
I see a great athlete. I think he's going to test really well. He's super explosive. He has great play strength. He's got a really firm anchor, and he's only a junior coming out, so he's got all those to him. I see, what I just said about Lomu and finding answers and having a natural feel and like coordination. I don't really see that with Freeling. I am worried about the reactive athleticism with him, the resetting of hands, sorts of like things of that nature where he has to go find an answer. And I think it really showed up in the running game a lot. He was effective in pass pro. I think he hits his landmarks really well. And like I said, he's really strong on contact. One of the strongest probably outside of Caden Proctor, Prince Mainoa in this draft class. But I have more concerns with him. So he's more of a day 2 guy for me.
It's funny because, my description of him might sound like what I said about Lomu, but with less confidence. So I'm kind of on the same page with you because he'll be bigger and longer, but like the core strength, he just feels slight. He just feels really slight right now to me as far as run game and pass game strength, and then just another might take a couple years projectable type of player, but without the pure football skills of maybe some of the other tackles. So we'll see with Freeling. Definitely getting a lot of hype right now as we head into the combine. Interior offensive line, we mentioned Maui Noah is your top one from Miami. Vega, we're shorting it to Vega now, which is cool.
Oh,
Ioane
okay.
from
Easier.
Penn State. Connor Liu from Auburn. And then Chase Pasantis from Texas A&M and Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon. Your top 5.
Yeah, Ioane and Maui Noah, not much to talk about there. Everyone has the same take. Ioane's he's good. I mean, just draft him. He'll probably go, I think, if Tyler Booker went top 15 last year, I feel like Ioane's probably going to end up going top 15 this year. Just very clean prospect. Lou, I think, has gotten hated on a little too much at this point. I'm not calling him a first rounder. He came off, I believe it was a broken ankle, got rolled up on the backside earlier this year. But he's a true junior. Has been starting since his freshman year at Auburn at center. I see his sophomore year I liken to early career Frank Ragnow in that I was just like, once the play strength catches up. And it didn't overnight, right? He's still a junior. He's still, I think, the youngest offensive lineman in this draft class, I want to say, coming out. But he'll get there. And you saw a guy who plays with awesome foot and hand coordination. His base into contact is very consistent. There's just a lot of clean tape, if not a lot of – there's not a lot of dominant tape, but there's a lot of clean tape for a guy that young that, again, I think the rest catches up and you're getting a darn good center somewhere.
As we're wrapping up today, and we're going to do defense tomorrow, so we'll go through all your top 5s tomorrow on defense. Do you think anything philosophical about the age thing now that there's fewer players coming out early?
Yeah.
There's more 22 and 23-year-old developed. I've been through 4 and 5 years of college football, going through the NIL world. You're getting developed football players versus a 20-year-old Sadiq or a 21-year-old player. How do you balance that when you're putting your board together?
Young guys first. I mean, like, I'll take the youth 9 times out of 10.
So here's where I would push back before you even explain.
Okay.
The Browns do the same, right? And so, like, Greg Newsome was their first rounder who was 20, and they didn't get to the second contract right now.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like this intriguing second contract corner, whereas someone who's more developed, like, so are you paying a guy for the first 4 years? Or are you paying a younger guy? Kyle Pitts is about to hit you didn't get the benefit of Kyle Pitts' youth as a 20-year-old draft pick, or Newsome's 20-year-old, youthfulness and develop, because they still haven't fully developed, versus maybe a guy that's 22 or 23, and you get that value on their first contract. So that's what I'm asking.
Well, so I think why I say I go with the young guys now is because they don't come out if they're not developed, right? The young guys who have come out now, I'm trying to think of just like all the ones in this class, whether it's the top O linemen of Lomu, Proctor, Maui Noah, Fano, whether it's Connor Liu, who's right here, or whether it's some of the wide receivers like Carnell Tate, you're just – they didn't get their next step. And
so
it's not 100% there's always a next step.
If they're coming out early, they're probably the best of the bunch.
Yes. It's not a 100% chance there's a next step, but 80% of guys from year 3 to year 5 get better in college. So the guy who's in year 3 coming out, you get his next jump. That the guy who's in year 5 coming out, and in this class we got some 25-year-olds who are going to be top 50 picks.
Akeem Mesidor, Romello Height.
Keontae Scott.
So how do you balance? Those guys are producing as men, and you make a lot of physical development. 22 to 25 years old.
Yeah,
just a huge development time in your body physically as an athlete, and you're balancing a 25-year-old playing against 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds and their production versus like if Keldrick Falk and Mesidor get drafted in within a few picks of each other, imagine Falk's got 5 years to be what Mesidor is.
Yeah, it's
a fascinating process.
I like to go back in those guys, just watch kind of what they were before, just to see if the talent was just flashing and they need to be consistent. So, but it's always case by case. Has something I say in the NFL draft all the time. You can't paint one broad brush, but on the whole, avoid overaged guys early, take them later if you really love them.
Love it. So that's offense. Sam, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
Nope.
And we're going to record again wearing the same stuff for tomorrow. All right, that's it for us today. Mike Renner and his top 5 prospects at each position on offense. Again, remind everybody where they can find this and everything else you're doing.
It's over on cbssports.com, and you can find Push and Pile anywhere you get podcasts.
All right, that's it for us today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Mike Renner's top 5 defensive prospects. Check the mic.